I wanted to make a video to break down my texturing for the flare gun and all the kind of steps that went into it. So first of all, when I put sort of any model into Substance Painter, obviously I'll bake it, but I always switch from the default environment map, which is Panorama, to Studio 02. Because, I mean, if you compare that switch now, this lighting is a lot more neutral. If you go back to Panorama, if this one, there's a lot of it's warmer lighting, and then there's a sort of rim light here, and up top, like it's blue, and then it goes orange, which looks lovely, but it kind of distorts your colours a bit when you're trying to work within the material and sort of make something realistic. You'll find that, or at least in my opinion, it's tougher to sort of work out what colours that you've really got. And you don't want to just be working in base colour all of the time, because then again, you can't see how like other maps are impacting your colours as well. So that's always what I sort of start out with. Studio 02. So first of all, I sort of just got everything into groups, sorted by like the material, wood on the grip, and then brass like on the barrel, and then all the other parts. Things that I thought sort of went together, things like the screws are all on one, and these are just on a selected by a black mask, and I've just gone over to select which UV I wanted to be affected by it. So I will start off by showing you how I did the wood and go through everything until it's all finished. So as you can see, everything's sort of greyed out for the purposes of walking you through. So to start off with, I'll show you the wood grain. I started off with one of the default Substance Painter woods. Now usually I wouldn't do this, but because I was doing something more realistic, I wanted to be able to get the wood grain quickly, even though I knew I will actually personalise it a lot down the line. For me, it was important to be able to sort of streamline that process and just make it as fast as possible while keeping it nice. So I went with the wood American Cherry. I do think it's one of the default ones. I was able to just like change some of the fibres and sort of these things, and one of the things that I did notice was important for me to do was change it from its default on UV projection. Now I was a bit confused at first, because I thought, oh well, that looks nice, it's sort of curved, but looking back at my references on Pure Ref, the wood sort of doesn't curve down like that, like with the shape of the handle. It's still, the wood is still like a straight grain. So one of the ways I just kind of combated that was changing this from UV projection to triplanar, which as well is usually what I set everything to anyway, because it helps reduce visible seams if you've UV'd something a bit naff, shall we say. Worst case scenario though, but usually that sort of fixes a lot of things. Anyway, in this case, I got the nice straight wood grain that I wanted. And then the next layer I've got is for sort of deeper, more dirty wood grains. I just went in with one of these anisotropic noise, I think we'll call it. But I liked that because it was sort of streaky, and I could sort of create some of the deeper cuts within the wood as well. And then again, I just do clouds just to sort of cut away at bits I don't want. It's really useful for making things look a bit more weathered, to just cut away things with like a subtract or multiply layer. Next one, I've got a little bit of sort of dirt detailing. It might be really hard to see, but you can sort of see it here. Ultimately, you might not think it adds a lot, but when you sort of build up these things, it just adds to it looking a bit more realistic. And I always sort of play around with like roughness and things. I didn't do it here, other things like dirt, because I'm just sort of trying to get in the base wood up. Once we go more up in layers, you'll see what I mean. But then now we've got that dirt, and then we've also got some other little details on the normals here, just to make it look like it's been sort of weathered and used over time. Been scratched or whatever. Right, that's the sort of base wood that I got. And then I sort of tried to break down on some of my references, like some of the different colours in the wood. This is the main reference that I used for this wood here. So this is my yellow colour variation. I used Grunge Leaks at first, and that's what it looks like sort of straight away when you just slap it on. I could have changed all the balance and things, but basically I kind of just kept randomizing the seed until I kind of got it in the place where I thought was appropriate, sort of in this circled location. Because when I was comparing it to my ref, you can sort of see all these yellow colour blotches. I'm not too sure what has caused this over time, but either way you can see that it's sort of there, this colour, this yellow colour in this area. So that's what I was trying to sort of achieve there. And what I did was I just sort of painted out where I didn't want it. I used a black paint and just went over where I didn't want it by hand. And then, like I just did, where I painted it out, I also went back in and painted where I wanted it again with a smaller little brush, sort of to emulate these little splotches here. That's what I tried to get. And then I just put on a simple blur directional. Doesn't look like it does much, but you don't really want it so sharp, I suppose, like there. It just makes it look like it blends in a bit better. And then after all that, I still put a sharpen on it. So yeah, then next one, I go in with dirt spots. Just fill it in and then do a mask editor. And then block it out where I don't want it with some clouds on a multiply layer. Again, I was just trying to sort of recreate all the bits that I could pick out on here. So for these dirt spots here, I was trying to sort of emulate these spots on its grip. It's sort of scattered throughout, but they are a bit more clumped than like the yellow spots that we had before. And then again, I go in with some orange variation, like my ref. I tried to recreate the ones where here you can sort of see that it's more orangey tones, more deeper red. And it's sort of up here as well, more so, compared to down here, there's not so much. So I tried to do that again, as you can see. Again, I go in with a paint layer, just to sort of mark out where I wanted it. So here and maybe a little bit there. And then, yeah, you can sort of see how I painted it in here. This is without the map on top. But then this grunge map on top, once I put it on this multiply layer, it takes away, based on like where I've painted it already. And then for this one, didn't really know what to title that layer, but going back to the reference, you can sort of see this circle is a lot more dark compared to the rest of the grip, and I think that is because it is, it does sort of indent. And on my model, I did in fact try to make the indent, and I think I did do the indent pretty well, in my opinion. I brought it back in that sort of circular motion, but I still wanted to emphasize that a bit more when I was referencing my gun here. So I just simply painted it in. I painted that circle sort of where I wanted it here. And then I sort of erased the middle bit so it looks like only the edges are being hit, and that's where it's sort of the darkest. And then just blur it so it's not so sharp of an edge there. Can you see? Yeah. And then just sharpen it again, and then sort of recreates that little dark indent there, makes it look a bit more 3D, if you will. And then again, I tend to try and get all the base colours down here. Like I can show you what it's like in the base colour channel. That's kind of what it looks like. Pretty woody, I would say. But obviously then it's missing things like roughness and all those other details, high normals. But I prefer to sort of apply that afterwards, after I've got all the bases that I wanted. I prefer to go in like this and then sort of decide where I want it all on top. Because also, I think it makes sense to do it on top after you've got all your bases as well, because if you sort of think about how it would have been applied in real life, well, it's been over time that like things have weathered on top of it anyway. So I tried to sort of recreate like if you can sort of see how it shines on here, you can definitely sort of see how all the scratches are on the surface and all these little indents here. That's what I wanted to get at. This is just my layer that I made to sort of control where all the height and the roughness is. You can see how the light is hitting it as well. That makes it more obvious. But yeah, I sort of controlled that it was on the edges via curvature, and then we've just got a nice directional noise. Again, I really like directional noises like this because it's just really nice on wood. It's very low effort to create a wood grain with these sort of materials, but it's good in a sense because you don't spend a lot of time like drawing the wood hand by hand, you know. Then I just blur it, and then I just sort of painted where I wanted it, or didn't want it rather, because you can see it's sort of applied on top. I didn't want it on this area because I'll make this area like a metallic later, so then I just get rid of that. And then for the last little touch, I had some little dark spots around sort of other contact areas. You can see that I put it up here as well. But yeah, I put it mainly where the screw is and where there's sort of been, I'm not sure if it's rushed, but it's sort of darkened around this area because there is something there. The screw or around here where it's touching that metal probably is rust. Either way, I went in and darkened around it like so. I just mainly painted that on really. Then for the final bit of the wood, I go in and add these scratches. Now, these are done sort of all over the place. Like I'm not using any sort of curvature to control it. What I was sort of trying to recreate here was, you see these sort of really deep there's a lot of these scratches on the surface, and at this point this is what I thought it was missing. Like if you compare, I think that really sort of brought it together. So I just layer a lot of these scratches. So this is sort of without any scratches at all. And then this is like stage 1 of the scratches. There's a lot of them, but they are not so visible as the other ones that I'll add. So then I go in and actually warp them once I've got the scratches on, because these, again, I just use a directional scratches thing that's already in Substance Painter. But I always want to give it my own little flair, so it doesn't look like I've just slapped on a material or anything. So I go in with a warp, make it look like it's not so straight, and then again, I'll add another layer of the scratches. These ones have also got these little holes as well, which I thought kind of suited trying to make these ones as well. So yeah, we've got 2 types of these scratches on this wood. That's how I did that. And then that's just in its own little folder as well. So I'll close the wood now, and I'll move on to the brass. I'll show you how I did the brass. Now, let me go to the bottom. Firstly, I just slapped on one of these, this one. I slapped on one of these default materials for the base. Now, I could have just done that on my own. Realistically, it is just like a yellowy colour. I did end up changing the colour if you compare. But it's just nice to get a nice reference for how metallic something should be, like brass. So yeah, as you can see, it's quite metallic, quite rough, quite shiny. if you look at it and think it's odd because, well, my reference isn't as shiny as that, it's a bit worn down, that is perfect because everything that I add on top has its own sort of metallic value or roughness value that'll either take away from this base one or sort of add on top of it. So in my opinion, having this sort of really rough and shiny metallic base already gives me a sort of good foundation to take away things later on, because if I start from something that is just not rough at all or not metallic at all, well then it's really quite difficult to sort of add it in later, even in little parts that I want it. So yeah, I started with the brass, like that. And then this actually is only affecting the height and the normals. What this is a iron brushed material, which I believe is down here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. And these materials also apply sort of colour and roughness and all of that. But what I wanted was just the height from this, because if you look at my reference here, you can really see these fine straight lines. And at first, when I didn't have this, I was wondering, I think I'm missing something. But having this on the base so early on really helped me to create, well, the base for it. So you can sort of see them here. So yeah, I just kind of stole one of these, iron brushed, wherever it is. And that's where I put it on. There you go, there you can see. I just stole the height and the normals from that. Obviously made it a bit bigger or smaller depending on my reference, and yeah. Now, I didn't add any colour to it because, well, I didn't want to add any of it yet. I was just trying to create the sort of base textures to then sort of rough it up after. So going in, I now create the AO, the ambient occlusion, just to give it a bit of a layer to work with later on. It's just to sort of make it seem like it's already got some kind of lighting already hitting it or shading sort of thing. It's a good way to just sort of add quickly add dimension to the model, I think. And for this, that's just the ambient occlusion on its own, you can sort of see, like with and without. But I also decided to add a texture on top of it, a grunge dust texture wide, and I just put that on a multiply map, or you can use a subtract map, so that it takes away what's already there. Because if I show you, if I put that on normal now, then that will add it everywhere. But just putting it on multiply or subtract will work. Makes it so that whatever you're applying on top will only it'll be retained within what you've got on the bottom. Like, it'll only stay within that area. And that was just a good way for me to quickly add some kind of dimension to it, because we just want to keep layering. Next up, I added some, what I like to call roughness variation, I suppose. Now, you can always sort of see there's tons of different kind of roughness on all of these reference pictures, and sometimes it is hard to pick out like what caused that or what that is. In this case, I think I used grunge. No, sorry, wrong one. What did I use? Oh, ratio grunge map. Yeah. So I thought that was quite nice, and it kind of looks a little bit like fingerprint, I suppose, or just general variation. Not sure, but I think it's good to just keep layering these things, and then you can add more specific parts comparing to your reference after. But yeah, that just quickly added on to making it look a bit more weathered. You see, it has a slight colour to it, a warmish sort of brown, just so that it's a bit easier on the eyes to pick out, as you can see, with and without colour, if I just turn that on and off. And then I go in to sort of add some edge highlights or curvature. Now, it's very, very small, but again, going back to my reference, you can sort of see where there's edge highlight, or in reality sort of where the edges have been scratched. But I guess in stylized art, you do a lot of edge highlights via curvature and things like that, and it just felt a bit natural to include, I guess, for any sort of model. Like even there, it is just where the light is hitting it, and I could have recreated that. But it's nice to have these on the model as is, because then you get to play around a bit more with lighting afterwards on its own, because you always know that like the edge highlight will be there no matter where the light source is coming from, sort of thing. So yeah, I just added that. Not a lot, not a lot was added to it. We only wanted a little bit, just to make sure that it is still appearing, you know, weathered. And a nice thing about that was it does sort of add these scratches as well, and these little blobs. You can see it here too. It's really nice there, because there's a nice surface for it. Moving on, I then go in with the dirt. Now I sort of add that everywhere. I'll show you how I sort of went through that. So I use this dirt generator. Now it says outdated because I'm not on the... this file wasn't on the recent version of Substance, but I'm pretty sure this is a dirt generator within Substance Painter already. I just started with that. Obviously I really went through and changed everything here. But then I go in and sort of paint in or out where I don't want things. I can't seem to spot the difference here. Probably on here. Oh well. Doesn't seem to add much. I might have forgotten to delete it. Anyway, I go in with the mask builder. Just to sort of control where things are, like the levels and stuff. And this gives it quite a nice dirty effect. Just again, keep layering things. And here is probably where it's the most nicest in my opinion. Because I have, like I said, I've got that really rough, shiny metallic before on the base colour. Once you go in after, and then you decide to turn the roughness down on whatever layer you're working on, you can see the difference in the roughness here, because this is not rough at all compared to the base, and the dirt just really sort of stands out in a way against it, and it just looks like it's on top of the material. That was the effect I was trying to achieve. Sort of around here, you can see where it sort of darkens there, where there's been a build up like that. And as you can see, it's obviously not as shiny as, let's say, up here where it's properly metallic. So yeah, I'll go in with that. That's sort of built up around there as well. Really good mask builder. You can see the difference. So yeah, that's me dirt. And then I start adding some actual colour variation to this. Like I'm not, at this point I'm thinking, okay, the material itself, like the brass material, I think that's okay so far. I'll go in and add tweaks later on, but let's get some colour variation on it now. So I'm starting with a light pink colour, because I could sort of spot that around here, like there, and you can sort of see some there where it's a bit more pinkish. It's all on these references really. It's not just one tone, even if it was originally intended to be. Over time, there's some colour variation. So I just go in and add that with mask generator, and then I put in one of these grunge maps, and then do the same again, but with a dust, and then like 2 more image inputs in here, texture inputs, and then I just keep playing around with all these parameters until I get this look that I wanted, just to sort of build on it. And then again, same principle, I want an orange colour variation. Same thing again, grunge rough dirty texture, change all the parameters, make it a bit more unique, and it just keeps building up colour, as you can see. Subtle, but it's there, just like on our reference. See? There's tons of different colours in here, like not minding the mould or whatever, just in the base brass. So now I start with the rust, and this is honestly mostly hand painted at this point, because I was getting really particular with where I wanted the rust. So it sort of looks like a few different tones with the rust. I went in with the texture. I did stick to some like spots, because I really wanted it to, you know, look like rust in a way. I was combining a few different references here because I wanted it to sort of look gradual in a way. I liked the look of it when it's just developing, if that makes sense. So yeah, started with the rust. You can really see it there. And then I just keep going in. Keep making the rust. For this one, for this rust above, I sort of copy and pasted this one and then lowered some of the parameters so that it only sticks within that area. Because I noticed on some of this rust, there's almost a subsurface scattering effect. And what I mean by that is, it starts off with a really big, warm tone in a massive area. So you can see here, this area is quite big, and then this is a warm tone here before, and then the main rust is in a smaller area within this bigger area. It's quite condensed, but then it's desaturated a bit more and it's a bit darker. That's what I mean by subsurface scattering, almost. Obviously it's not, but that's just the process that it reminded me of. So then I kept going in with that rust, kept deepening it up, kept adding some more within these spots I created, so you can see. And I was just trying to recreate some of these colours that were in there is all. So yeah, keep layering them. And then I got to the point of going, I want to be a bit more particular about the placement with this. So start off with a lot of layers. So let's go to the first one. Now, don't judge me for my names, but it is quite a weird green and yellow mix if you ask me. So this is when I was just trying to block in, sort my base colours again. Was not too bothered about getting it too perfect at this point because I knew I'd probably be going over it a lot. But yeah, as you can see on the barrel of the gun, there's quite a gradual sort of colour change here. If we ignore that it is rust, of course. So I tried to block in this yellowy colour here. As you can see, I just painted that on, literally, with paint, and then I just wanted to add in any kind of texture, so I just put on a moisture noise on top, multiply, as you do. And then keep going with the colour, trying to build up to that really deep red, because I didn't want to just slap on a yellow colour and then straight up go to that deep red. I didn't think it would look realistic at all, because you need these colours to sort of blend, because in the middle, if you can sort of see, underneath this green, there is a sort of warm orangey tone in the middle of the deep red and then the yellow. So that I was trying to build up to that. So again, I just keep adding on these. I keep painting on freehand, like actually hand painting where I want these tones to be. And then again, I just keep slapping on a texture just to make it look a bit more realistic, like so. And then this is where I sort of introduce the deep red tones and whatnot. But yeah, same principle again. I still just paint where I want it and then add some texture on, and then it looks quite like the picture, I would hope. And then again, I'll go in for some little orangey spots when I'm trying to reference these, because even on top of all of this rust, you can still see these orange spots, and then you sort of travel over there as well. Quite small. And then I try and start with the green rust here. You can sort of see. Make that a bit smaller. So yeah, I'm trying to build up these colours. Now, the thing about Substance Painter, to my knowledge, I don't know how you can blend colours like you would in, let's say, Photoshop, like colour mix. I don't know if you can colour mix, so it's really important, even though I've got a lot of layers here, it's really important for me to try and emulate sort of colours mixing onto this. Not that I was trying to create a painterly effect, because I was trying to go for a realistic look, but you've got to acknowledge that even in sort of realistic rust, it's still sort of layered. There's still lighter colours on top of no, sorry, deeper colours on top of lighter colours, and that's what I was trying to start with here. So again, for this, I just go in with my paint. I actually let a lot of the brushes here do this, so I've got some custom ones, but they're just like city brushes. I don't even know how they got in there, but I do go in with a lot of the default ones. Probably something like Spot. I use some of these spotty ones. Watercolour Spot is really good. On a very low opacity, I just keep going in, even with my mouse. I just use my mouse for this. Just on a low opacity, on a big size, and you just keep clicking and clicking and clicking until you've sort of built up what you want. I think there's even a rushed brush. That's pretty good. Or a mould. I think it's called mould, actually. Yeah, mould was pretty good for this. To create those spots. Anyway. Just keep going in, and then again, add your texture on top, just sort of take away a bit more, wherever. And then, you know, same principle, just keep layering, same technique. I like to add on a high pass sometimes, if I feel like I've made a bit too deeper strokes, because once you put a high pass on multiply, I'll show you what it's like normally. Normally a high pass will go on everything, if you see here. But if you just put it on multiply, it sticks within the sort of range that you've set. I like to use that to create a watercolour effect, but in this case I used it to sort of take back some of the values that I put without just lowering opacity. So again, just making some of the darker spots, trying to get some deeper variation into this. It has a lot of different tones, which is why I've got so many different layers, but again, just trying to build up what I can see here. And this was a nice part. It'll probably sound insane, but I really liked in these pictures that there was some kind of desaturated grey purple. That was a nice touch, I thought, to make it look a bit more like rust. I just like it on the green. But yeah, same principle, just painting it in with a brush. And then we go in with the dark base, I've called it. Now the darker rust here is what I'm trying to recreate on this area of the gun. Now I go in with a really big brush here, and I'm sort of trying to create these quite unique shapes, in my opinion, that I've sort of formed. Something I noticed along doing this was that they're sort of blocky in a way. It's sort of blocked there, and then blocked there, and then there are these sort of unique, almost brushstroke like splotches which kind of juxtapose the blocks as well. Like this is quite blocky, and then you got these shapes there. So that's what I tried to do here. There's blocks of it here, and then there's also these splotches, if you will. Yeah, so that's what we started out with here. And then same principles as of what we did up here. I will probably duplicate this and then paint inside the sort of limit that I've set previously on this layer, just to make it look like the rust is deepening inside. So again, I'll just be looking at all these different tones, try to make this purple tone here, as you can see, and then there's these green tones here and here that I've tried to work in there, and then tried to work in these very darker tones, these darker brown, almost black on here. I didn't actually use black. I sort of stay within that range, and that's how I did the rust or the mould, I called it, on the brass. So I'll close that layer. And now on top of everything, I added the same scratches. Well, not the same. I added similar scratches like I did here onto everything on the brass here. Because if we go back to my reference as well, these scratches are quite obvious. They're quite in a certain direction, I would say. And that's what I tried to recreate here. Just again, grunge, scratches, rough, play with all the parameters, make it look a bit more unique and how it's like in the reference. And I like these again because it does include these little spots like the reference has as well. But yeah. And also, I did say at the start I like to stay within Studio 02, but every once in a while I also like to have a look at what it looks like in Panorama, because I feel like Panorama's lighting is a lot more realistic because it does have the colour lighting, yes, which makes it bad in some senses, but also the lighting is quite strong, and yeah, in that sense I do find it to be realistic. So I like to compare between the two environments just to see what it looks like in other ones, because it helps me gauge if some elements are maybe too rough, too metallic, too not metallic, stuff like that. So then, while I'm just working, I'll have a change and see. Going back to Studio 02, going back on my reference, got the scratches, and then I'll close that because I've showed you the brass. Next up, the iron, I called it. I think it's iron, anyway. Let me turn all these off so I can show you the process there. So, again, this material's pretty good. Like I did with the brass, I slap a raw iron damaged default material on here. Just so that I can easily and quickly get some of the detail in already. Yeah, so I changed the colour, be a bit more like my reference, because even though it is, you know, metal, you think of it of just being grey, don't you? On the reference, it is still quite warm, or at least a lot of the variation is. So on the base colour, I still made it like a warm grey. I thought suited it. Also, the colours just go together at the end of the day. So then I start going in with the indents. I called it rather. To me, these are different from like the scratches that I've applied. I'm not too sure how. They might have been caused in the same way, but it's just good to get some more variation. Now, I did a lot of mask editing with just tons of different textures on top, and then levels it to make it sure it's where I want it. You know the deal. These have a lighter grey still warm colour, and I did that because if you look at it with and without colour, it's sort of hard to make out, to be honest, like that these are in fact indents, like they're going in. But I always try and go by the rule of, if you want to make something darker, you need something lighter next to it. So when I was trying to make the indents, I just thought, let's put a lighter colour inside so it looks like it's, you know, going in, like the light sort of reflecting there. Next up, I called it curvature just because that's the generator, but here I was just trying to make some edge wear. You can see that the colour's a bit more grey and desaturated here. And on this curvature generator, I do a map on top, of course, I do all of that, but I also make it go in a bit, I think, on the height. Yeah. So it just looks like it's been chipped away. This material has been chipped away at the edges, so it doesn't look so blocky, let's say. And then going with the rust, far less layers on the iron material, you can see this time. But yeah, this is sort of going in all the cavities, called rust cavity. I use a metal edge wear detect, again, one of the default substance generators. But it's important, obviously, to apply a lot of things on top and make it your own, and don't just slap something on and leave it. But yeah, I changed a lot of the parameters here. I also combine it with a dripping rust, because as you can see, that this generator here is only really applying some random spots of rust, sort of where I guess it could be, but it's not where I want it to be in relation to all the other objects as well. So this generator makes sure that it's sort of around contact points where it would have added wear over time, I guess. So that's the rust, which I put in its own layer as well. So next for the iron, just add the scratches again. you know, same principle as before. This got a lot of scratches, you can sort of see it there. Even on a low quality image, you can sort of make out what that is. There's a lot of scratches. Same technique as before, really. I think I just add a lot of individual ones here. So I'll start off with one scratch, probably make them quite large, quite a lot of them. And, you know, make all these your own. And then scratch two, layers two. You might make them like a different rotation, might make them deeper or lighter. And then go in again. And same thing, I think I ended up making these a bit smaller and a bit lighter. Just because you don't want to add just one set of things. It's nice to layer. You know, that's what I was thinking. So, trigger worm. We've got it here. Now this is on its own separate thing because it was important to me to sort of make it look like the actual trigger where realistically most of the weathering should happen. It has been appropriately weathered over time because obviously this is where your finger is. A lot of contact here compared to maybe somewhere up here, right? So this is on its own thing, and all I did here was sort of paint in along these areas where I imagine a finger would be, and then just sort of mask editor with a texture, just go in and change up the height, the metallic, the roughness and such, and yeah, just make it look like it's been weathered a bit more compared to the rest of it. Just trying to make sense of what would have happened realistically. And then again, I got a screw generator, and this is how I did the screws. Now obviously I didn't model these indents of the screws, but I used this screw generator that I found on ArtStation. So all this does is you paint in where you want the screw. So for me, luckily, I put all my screws here, so I could just go like this, like change UV chunk fill, and then just put it all there. Then that's that, right? Then going back, got them all there. And then with this screw generator mask, it's really good because it saves me a lot of time trying to go on Google and find alphas of transparent screws and whatnot. But this just includes all these different kind of types of screws, really, that you can just choose from. And then still work on top of, so where is it? Trying to show you. Oh yeah, so I chose the flat screw because, well, as you can see, same type of screw as me reference. But on the screw generator, there's a lot of different types of screws. Now it'll look a bit weird because obviously I finished it intending for it to be a flat one, but you can sort of see it just applies the normals of what kind of screw it would be. That's all. You could do that on your own, but you can make your own alphas for it, of course. There's no need to buy a generator online. But it's just nice to have. It just makes things a bit more easier if you're modelling this a lot. So anyway, all that does is add the normals of the screw where I put it. End of. So next up, I just add a iron raw damaged to all of my screws just to make it look a bit more, well, metallic, you know. Just like it's been weathered, really. That's all I wanted. And then here, just add a bit more colour variation with a random texture map sort of thing. Just add a bit of height to it, as you can see. Just a bit more effect. And then I also add an ambient occlusion. Now, I actually paint this on because I actually tried to do it with a curvature or an ambient occlusion. I tried both generators and it wasn't working as well as I wanted it to. So because this is a really small little part of the model, it's easy to just paint it on with an actual brush, you know, small, 1, 2, done, add it around, easy. And you can be really loose with it because all I did afterwards was blur it and then just looks a bit more gradual. So yeah, I was trying to make the indent here, like this is without the AO, I called it, And yeah, you've got the normals from the screw generator, but still doesn't properly look like it's being affected by the light, in my opinion. So I just added that AO there, and I just turned the roughness down as well, just so it doesn't look like it's being so shiny, I suppose, because it's trying to be dark, trying to add shading if you think about it in a 2D way. Again, just go in and add some specks, I called it, just some grunge spots, splashes, just little details on the screw. On this part, I probably did have to imagine a lot of the things I thought were there, but it's a really smaller detail, so it was fine. And again, same principle as the AO. I just go in, you know, wham, wham, line, line, and that's my sort of edge highlight, faux edge highlight. That's me screws. And then we've actually modelled the pistol. Well, we've modelled the pistol, yeah. We've textured all the pistol, and then the only thing missing now is the engravings, which was quite troublesome because I had no idea what any of these were. Now, originally, I was going to add my own little, you know, Lofts and Pimlott. My last name's Lofts. My boyfriend's name's Pimlott. Liverpool and Preston, that's where we kind of are based. But I decided against that because I realised this is, you know, specific to where this pistol was made. And the more research I did, the more I felt like I don't want to take creative liberties with that. I'm trying to make a realistic pistol. That was my challenge for this project. That was the challenge I gave myself. So I went with that. I just went with Webley and Scott, the original makers. And what I kept doing, I made my own alphas by just going in Photoshop and trying to recreate parts of these engravings as much as I could in Photoshop. So all I had to do to create my own alphas to import into Painter, I just made the bits that I wanted to, you know, be seen, white, and then everything I don't want, black. And I ended up with things like these, which I can show you, all my alphas that I got. So these are all the alphas that I made based on, you know, the engravings on the guns. A lot of these mean a lot of different things, and it was a struggle to sort of work out what they were sometimes. But you know, if you're ever in doubt, ask Reddit, and they'll tell you what everything is, which is what I did. So in the end, I got it figured out, and I was able to just make all the alphas that I wanted. And you might think that you know, I actually hand drawn some of these little bits, and yeah, I did, and they are not so smooth as I would have liked. They don't look like a proper graphic design thing that you could use, but I thought that was perfectly fine because in the end it's going to be really weathered. I'm going to put a warp on it. I'm going to, you know, swipe things away. I'm going to put scratches on. The more loose it looks, probably the better ultimately. So these are all my alphas, and in this project I added them via here. You can just add things to your library, add resources, whatever you want, and then once it's in there you can sort of say, is it an alpha, is it a base colour, is it a texture, and then I imported it to my project because I didn't need it in everything. Probably won't use these again, so added to this project in particular, and then I did it by side. So this is side 1, you can see. This is how I added it, and I just added them as an alpha, as I said. I gave them all the same colour. And I made the height sort of just enough so you could sort of see the writing as well. And again, like you can see here, for this one, well, for a lot of them, I just add a fill, which is me alpha, but then also on top any kind of texture. I chose a Clouds 3 on a multiply because as we know it'll take away, and then I just did that to all of these, and yeah, that was my technique of making it look a bit weathered over time, like it's been, you know, lost to time in general, and things have been sort of taken away. I chose not to include this mark, I believe, because this one, I believe, when I was researching, is I think the mark they put on the gun when it's decommissioned or out of use, or many, many years after it's made. So I didn't want to put that on because that's more of a recent thing, and I wanted to make this look a bit older, you know. So that's side one of the engravings. I just copy and pasted that, and then put it on the other side as well. All I had to do was sort of flip the image on the film with all of these offset, whatever, put 180 or something, and then yeah, that's how I did the engravings. So ultimately, that is my Webley and Scott flare gun. Now I'll show you as well panorama, and we can see the final product with a more suitable lighting. So yeah, thank you for listening to my breakdown. Hope it wasn't too long, but this is the way I sort of thought about making my gun. And this was important for me to do because mostly I don't work with procedural things. Not because I think it's bad, just because I prefer to do a lot of hand painting stuff and sort of control where things are, and I like the challenge of looking at something realistic and then thinking about how to translate things and simplify them while still keeping the same concept or communication. So with this gun, I was quite happy to take this procedural process, but also still use a mix of hand painting of to control where I wanted things, like with the rust, for example, or wood grain, things like that. But yeah, this is how it turned out. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope my breakdown made some sense to you. Bye!